Let's do 207ths. It says write each fraction as a mixed number. Well, if we try and figure out how many sets of 7 fit into 200, I know 7 times 20 would be 140. 7 times 25 is 175. 7 times 28. 7 times 8 is 56. 7 times 2 is 14. Plus 5 more makes 196. So I'm super close now. That would be 28 sets of 7. And then from 196 up to 200, I need 4 more to get to 200. So that's 4/7. Mr. Jacob's 7th grade class goes on a nature walk at their school and at a nearby park. Of the trees they study, 40% are at the school and 60% are at the park. 25% of the trees they study at the school are oak trees. 20% of the trees they study at the park are oak trees. What percent of the trees they study are oak trees? So here we see 100% represented between the trees that are at the school and the trees that are at the park. But today we're going to study percents of percents. So you see 25% of the school and 20% from the park. We'll revisit this question later in the lesson. Let's look at a sample where we're going to find 10% of 50% of 1,000. The word of indicates multiplication. We're going to change the percents to decimals, just like we did when we were working with rates in simple interest. 10% is 0.10, 50% would be 0.50, and we're multiplying all of that times 1,000. When we multiply these three values together, we end up with 50. So 10% of 50% of 1,000 is 50. Write an expression that represents each number and operation in the problem. Find 20% of 80% of 300. So 20% would be 0.2. 80% would be 0.8. And that is of 300. Use your expression from part A to write an equivalent expression that represents the problem, but with fewer numbers. Well, if we multiply together 0.2 and 0.8, that can make it with fewer numbers. And that is 0.16. But we still multiply by 300. Then use that expression from part B to find the answer to 20% of 80% of 300. And that is 48. Now let's find 40% of 70% of 90. 40% is rewritten as 0.4. 70% is rewritten as 0.7. And then multiply that by 90. And that comes out to 25.2. At a school, 60% of all students participate in after-school activities. 35% of students who participate in after-school activities are in the school play. What percent of all students are in the play? Well, 60% participate in after-school activities, and that is 60% of the students. And then 35% of those students participate in the play. If we multiply these together, 0.6 of the students times 0.35 is 0.21 multiplied by the students. So if we were to rewrite this back as a percent, that would be 21% of the students. Like I said, we were going to revisit this problem about Mr. Jacobs. Of the trees they study, 40% are at the school and 60% are at the park. 25% of the trees are oak at the school, and 20% at the park are oak. So let's start by looking at the trees at the school. 25% of the 40% are oak trees. So that is 10% from the school that are oak. And then we have 60% at the park, and 20% of those are oak. Which would be 12. So what percent of the trees they study are oak trees? That's all the trees from the school and from the park that are oak trees, which is 22%. 3 packages are loaded into a truck. The first package is 12% heavier than the second package. The third package is 20% lighter than the second package. A. Choose a weight for the second package. Find the weight of the first package, the weight of the third package, and how much heavier the first package is than the third package in terms of a percent. Let's say that second package is 20 or 50 pounds. If it's 50 pounds and the first package is 12% heavier, that would be 112% of the original weight of package 2. So we can cross multiply and divide here to figure out the weight of the first package, which says that the first package is 56 pounds. Then it says the third package is 20% lighter than the second. So if you're 20% lighter, you would remove 20%, leaving us with 80%. Cross multiply and divide here. 50 times 80 divided by 100 is 40. And then it says, and how much heavier is the first package than the third package in terms of percent? Well, the first package is 56 and the third package is 40. So that's a difference of 16 pounds. And it says how much heavier is it than the third? That means we're using the third in our whole position. So if we're figuring out the percent, 16 times 100 divided by 40 is 40%. So it's 40% heavier. Without selecting a weight for the package, how much heavier is the first package than the third package in terms of percent? Well, let's see. We had that the first package is 12% heavier, so that's 112. Or in terms of a decimal, it'd be 1.12. And the third package is 20% lighter, which is 80%, or 0.80 as a decimal. Then we can find the difference here. 1.12 minus 0.8 is 0.32. And then it says how much heavier is it than the third. So we're using that third percentage, which is 80. And how much heavier is that difference? I'm figuring this out as a percent. So cross multiply, then divide, and we still end up with 40 as our percent here. And that is the end of lesson 23 on percents of percents.